Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Sarita. Really glad that you're joining me here today. I have two Bath & Body Works candles for you today. They're not particularly new candles, but I haven't reviewed them and I hadn't burned them up to this point, and they're kind of similar to each other, and they're both currently on the floor at Bath & Body Works. So they are currently available, and I think they deserve kind of their own little reviews. So the candles in question are Coconut Sandalwood, which looks like this from 2 years ago. So they do actually have this packaging out right now. It's got this like kind of cool lid. They do have this packaging out right now, but they did not pour Coconut Sandalwood in this packaging, which is really actually quite nice and appropriate. Instead, they have it on the floor under a different packaging, and it looks like this, but it is currently available on the floor. So Coconut Sandalwood, and this one has been around for a while, I think, in the catalog. And then this one, which is relatively recent, and by that I mean like within the last 2 or 3 years, which is Mahogany Coconut. And currently it's in this beautiful blue, like a dusty blue, in the neutrals line. So this can be found on the floor as well. They actually poured Mahogany Coconut, gosh, it was like the end of December or something like that. It was for Candle Day, I think. They poured Mahogany Coconut, and it was in like this weird pastel kind of jar. And then they pulled them all off the floor like in January. So without selling out, I think. So I think we're going to see a lot of those versions in the semi-annual sale. But they just put this one on the floor, which is neutrals. Okay, so Mahogany Coconut and Coconut Sandalwood. And they're kind of similar because they're both coconut candles, and they're both coconut with a little bit of wood. So this one obviously being mahogany, and this one being sandalwood. And to be honest, on paper, or just in terms of my expectations, my anticipations, I anticipated really loving Coconut Sandalwood and probably not loving Mahogany Coconut. And I have smelled Mahogany Coconut recently, including that pastel version last, month or whatever else, and I was really on the fence about it. And here's why. It's a very obvious reason. I'm not sure, first of all, that mahogany and coconut go together. Second of all, like, how many of you, and I know there are like folks out there who love and would die with that like mahogany teakwood candle. It has a nostalgia factor at this point. Like, I get it. But for all the rest of us, mahogany coconut, mahogany teakwood is a lot. It's a lot. I've said this before, it's in the same genre as Midsummer Night for Yankee Candle. It's kind of a very old school, deep, heavy, masculine cologne fragrance before they were popular and before they were frankly nuanced and pleasant. So it was kind of a novelty, and many candle companies like Yankee, like Bath & Body Works had one like just kind of standout masculine cologne candle. And that was like their token cologne candle. And like I said, they tend to be very heavy and not particularly nuanced. They were the first. They were kind of like the prototype for a lot of masculine leaning candles that have become popular since then in the last 10, 15 years that are, like I said, more nuanced. They have more layers, they have more complexity, and they tend to not be so linear and so kind of generic. Yeah. So Mahogany Coconut is definitely, and they even have a Mahogany Coconut, Mahogany Teakwood Intense, as if we needed that, right? Mahogany Teakwood is kind of one of those fragrances where it's like, hide your children, warn the townspeople. Here comes Mahogany Teakwood. Um, and they have obviously tried to use that mahogany and blend it with various different other kinds of things like mahogany vanilla, which is actually fairly successful, I think, although I've never actually burned one of them, but it smells good on cold. The vanilla with the mahogany really tones it down and makes it something which is like quasi-palatable. And then there have been all kinds of different, there's a mahogany balsam, there's a mahogany coconut, there's a mahogany, I don't know, I'm like blanking. I can't remember all of the different mahoganies, but there's like, wait for mahogany strawberry pound cake. You laugh, but it could happen. It's like one of those like wacky, like summer, here's our new blend. Mahogany teakwood and strawberry pound cake are two bestsellers together. Can you imagine how disgusting that would be? But you know, there'll be people who'll be like, surprisingly, it works. Anyway, close parentheses. Hopefully we never see that mashup. Mahogany coconut is one of the ones that when I smelled it, I was like, oh, I just don't know. I don't know. It's not like the mahogany vanilla that kind of like makes sense. You have a marshmallow fireside kind of thing. Like the idea of vanilla with leather or vanilla with wood, like that makes sense. Because like I said, the vanilla has that creamy element that kind of mitigates, that softens, that adds a creamy connection. It makes sense. Vanilla with a wood. Coconut with a wood. Although I say that with like coconut sandalwood sitting here, which is a very common like beachy kind of vibe and beachy kind of blend. Anyway, mahogany coconut. I did not think I was going to like this very much, but I did love the packaging and I'm a sucker for neutrals. And even my sisters smelled this in the store over the Christmas holiday and like they're really picky. Sometimes they don't like my candles at all. And they were like, oh, I like that. So then I thought, well, actually, maybe this is more like palatable than I think it seems weird to me, but fine. So the notes on this are creamy coconut, and that's good because you do need a creamy component to really go up against that mahogany note. Creamy coconut, mahogany woods, aka teak wood, and then English lavender. Again, that makes me pause. Like, do we need mahogany and lavender? Lavender is generally a note that itself needs to be softened a little bit. And I say that being like not a particular like lavender fan. So maybe that's too prejudicial. But anyway. So now I am colored by the fact that I have burned this and I adore it. And so it's hard for me to remember like that first impression that was kind of off-putting. There is a very strong mahogany teakwood undertone to this. And it's a mahogany teakwood overtone, not just mahogany or mahogany wood. So mahogany teakwood is a cologne. It's a men's cologne. And the bottom and the base of this candle, and by base, I mean at least 50% of it, if not more. Let's call it 60% of this candle. 60% of this candle is mahogany teakwood. And it is a men's cologne, okay? It's not an acoustic wood performance. It's not even, if you were to smell it, like, yes, you might think that there's a little bit of wood in it, but what you would really go for is musk because it's just a men's cologne. But enough of that. We know what mahogany teakwood is. The top of it is almost a little bit of vanilla. I would say it's a coconutty vanilla. It's a coconut vanilla. I'm not getting a ton of lavender in this, but the lavender that is there is kind of providing the herbal bridge to the coconut vanilla. Yeah? So it's kind of like an unsung hero in some ways, because while you're not probably going to be able to pick out the lavender, it is providing kind of an herbal, floral presence that's like morphing into the fruitiness and the soft feminine nature of this like vanilla coconut. Yeah? So it kind of like blooms out of that masculine cologne into something that is creamy and feminine. Yeah. I wouldn't even say that it happens so gradual, and the continuum there is blended in such a nuanced manner that when you reach the top, you are not getting a strong sense of like wood and coconut, if that makes sense. So especially the neutrals packaging and marketing gives you the impression that you're going to get like wood and coconut, and it's going to be basically an acoustic naturals kind of performance of wood and coconut. And mahogany wood and coconut would actually be really an interesting candle. But I think you want to think about this more as being a conceptual. And by a conceptual, I mean not necessarily identifiable elements, especially not like essentials. Yeah? Like an essential one note of any particular thing, but instead kind of an atmospheric mood that in this case is more like perfumey and cologne-y. Yeah? But it doesn't have a whole lot of like really high notes. So it doesn't have like a ton of like bergamot or citrus notes that would just kind of overwhelm it and scream, I'm a perfume. I'm a cologne. Yeah? It starts out in that deep kind of musky masculine cologne place and then opens up to something that is like vaguely floral and fruity and creamy, which is the lavender, and I think some unlisted vanilla and coconut. And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. It's blended so perfectly. And when you have it burning in your house, again, it creates a mood, it creates an atmosphere. And it's not something that you walk in and think to yourself, oh, wood and coconut. Yeah? It's just this like gorgeous blended mixture of something that is sweet and also musky and also a little bit fruity and also a little bit herbal. And it's just gorgeous. It's just really gorgeous. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic, and I would 100% repurchase it for the fragrance. Performance, not good. Now, strength and throw, don't get it twisted. Strength and throw is actually decent. I would say that this candle probably was in the, what do I think it was? I would say in the 7 range. I think it was in the 7. Throw might have been closer to 7.5 or even 8. So it does carry, but I would say that the fragrance itself, in that it's kind of atmospheric and a little bit impressionistic, I think it was kind of coming in at 7. Yeah? So it will be a presence, but I think it's a beautiful like bedroom kind of scent, especially if you've got a very spacious bedroom as I do. So I put this in like the master bathroom and allowed it to kind of filter into the bedroom with the doors closed. And when I opened it up, it was like, yes, yes. So it was definitely a very large room filler. But I don't know that you would want candles to compete with it, because it is a 7, I think, maybe even a 6.5 in terms of strength. So if you had something that was very assertive and maybe one note, it might compete with this a little bit. It's really beautiful in terms of like just a very conceptual, it's premium smelling too. It's really premium. Here's the problem. Do you see how much of this candle is left? I can't go any further. I can't. I could put this under a warmer, and I may do that actually. But there's a little bit of a scald thing there. But even though there isn't a ton of soot right now in the jar, this candle just burned so sooty, so hot. The wax got very discolored, and then it developed puny wicks at like the midpoint. And as much as I love this candle, and I have tried to make it work, but it's been 3 burns in a row of puny wicks, which means that it takes an enormous time. It's dragging. It takes an enormous amount of time to try to like pull all the way out to the edges. Can hardly do it. And the strength and volume of the candle comes down so low, and it's just not worth trying to burn it anymore. It's not. And I want to so badly. I may warm it because I can probably still get quite a bit of fragrance actually if I just warm it all the way down to the bottom, you know? And before it gets any more discolored or any more sooty, I will repurchase this candle because the fragrance is so beautiful, so perfect, so gorgeous, and so my vibe. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I just really hope that other iterations of it are going to perform better. I wonder if that pastel version will perform better that we're going to see in semi-annual. Did somebody get the pastel version? How did it burn? Have you gotten Mahogany Coconut before? How did it burn? Somebody tell me that this has performed well. It was little wicks too. It wasn't like the rope-like wicks. All right, let's turn to Coconut Sandalwood, which is right here. I, on paper, should have loved this candle, and I really didn't. But as bad as this one performed, that's as fantastic as this one performed. So let's talk. The notes on this one are coconut palm, luxurious sandalwood, warm musk, and jasmine. So I bought this candle because I love sandalwood and I love coconut. So I was like, done, right? I bought this 2 years ago. And what's more, this is dominated by the sandalwood. The coconut is actually a very small part of it. It's kind of basey. I would say mid-level to base, yeah? And it's not particularly sweet. So all of those things on paper means that I should love it. Because all of that sounds right up my alley. I don't like things uber sweet. I don't like things when they're synthetic. I like them when they're deeper range. I love sandalwood. I love the woods. You know, like this sounds like my candle. And I have to be honest, I didn't really like it that much. Here's the thing. It's just very flat for me personally. It's not a dynamic candle. There is just so much sandalwood in this candle, and I don't know that it's a very nice sandalwood. It's just kind of like, I can't explain it. It's a very brown sandalwood. I know that's not helpful at all. This candle is very brown. Do you know when you like go to a potluck or like a, I don't know, barbecue or something like that, right? And you go through the food line, and then at the end of it, you like look at your plate, and you're like, my whole plate is brown and yellow. I did not pick any vegetables today. This plate is just really, really one note and like not a good one. That's kind of how this candle was. It was like a really brown candle, and it wasn't cut with anything. There weren't the layers that I wanted. There weren't contrasts. There weren't counterpoints. It's just this like really, really strong and aggressive kind of generic sandalwood note. It's not particularly sweet. It's not dynamic. It's not rich. It's not complex. It's just kind of like sitting there in kind of like this brassy way, you know? Like a lump. And then there's some coconut, but it's really more of a coconut nuance. It's not like a real coconut. You have to kind of smell for it, and you're like, okay, yeah, I think there's a little bit of coconut in there, you know? I think that, a la this one, this candle needs a brighter coconut note. And to do that without it being synthetic would be a small coup for Bath & Body Works, but they can do it. And I think that's what they need. They need almost like the coconut that's in here. They need kind of like a fruity, vanilla creamy coconut that's almost a little bit floral. You need to be able to like cut the sandalwood, I think, and give it a few more sweet notes and a little bit more complexity. This says it has jasmine in it. It needs a lot more jasmine. It really does. I think they're going in the right direction. This just wasn't executed right. It just wasn't. coconut palm. Like, the palm indicates that maybe even they were going for something green. Green would be great. Green would be great. Like a really like green kind of coconut against the like brown wood. That would be fantastic. And then if they could add a little bit of jasmine into it to open it up in like a more floral direction, now we're talking. So on paper, this is a really, really good concept. It really is. But I just don't think it's executed at all. It's just dominated by sandalwood. Yeah. There's a little tiny little spark of like a spiciness, which I think is actually kind of the pepperiness of the jasmine. So that's all that's coming forward from the jasmine is like this little like pop of like black pepper spice from the jasmine, which is nice. But it's staying in the same range as that like sandalwood, and therefore can't really, what we need is something creamy. What we need is something floral. What we need is maybe something green. Like, you have to provide some relief for that sandalwood to really make the sandalwood welcome as opposed to overwhelming and outstaying its welcome. That being said, this candle, ignore the little smudge mark there. That's from me like burning it in a weird way. This candle burned like an absolute dream. No soot, no soot. Burned up every time, pulled out every time, burned all the way down to the wick clips, all the way down. And this candle gave me a 7.5 or an 8 every time. Every time. Every time. Like clockwork. And what's more, the minute you light it, it like goes up to that 7.5 range. Like, you don't have to wait for 15 minutes, for half an hour. It's there. It's there, and it's consistent, and it's flawless. If every Bath & Body Works candle burned like this one, oh my gosh, life-changing, life-changing. If this one burned like that. Isn't it always the case that like the candle that you really, really love, like, doesn't perform? And the one that you really don't, like, performs like a champ. And it almost makes me kind of like emotional, you know? It's kind of like people, you know? Like, nobody's black and white. There's like attributes that you like and attributes that you don't like. And like, it's just the way that life is, you know? It would be wonderful if candles were just black and white. You know, the fragrances that you hated performed really badly and it was so easy to pass on them, but it's just not the way it is, you know? This one was fantastic. So much so, and do you see those little divots? This is from where I burned it once and I'm like, can you go? Can you go another burn? And then it ended up, you know, the wick clips were right there and it just didn't. But let me tell you something. I burned it up and it pulled those little tiny divots right around those wicks. I was getting a 7 in the final like 10 minutes of this candle where I burned it up. And then 10 minutes later, it was like, no, like the wick clips are too close and it just kind of extinguished itself. I was floored. Even in the tiny pools that were created around those wicks, 7, right there, right there, right there, right there, filling my space. It's really hard to hate on a candle when it performs that well. It's just really hard, you know? Has Coconut Sandalwood always performed that well? They just need to, I mean, they're not going to. But I really think that the notes here on this candle need to be executed the way that they're listed. I want a candle with a strong sandalwood with moderate sweetness, moderate, which means a coconut that's botanical and, if at all possible, dewy and green with the palm leaves. And then I want just enough jasmine to provide a little bit of floral, exotic sweetness without overtaking. Yes, without creating too much sweetness. That candle would be a paradise and tropical dream. That's the candle I want. I'm just not convinced that this is it. And I just don't think it was executed quite well. That's all. As well as this one performed, that's as badly as this performed. But when it comes down to it, friends, it's, at least for me, it's usually about the fragrance. I want to buy a candle that I like the smell of. And between these two, I think Mahogany Coconut is the more beautiful smell. I just do. So I would repurchase Mahogany Coconut and cross my fingers and toes and hope that it was going to be a proper performance. I just hate it. This is the worst of the performing Bath and Body Works candles. Freudian slip. You know what I mean? When they like start getting really hot, they're already sooty from the top. You're like frantically trimming the wicks, you know? And then halfway through, the dreaded puny wicks, the wax that's becoming super discolored and flecked, and you just know you're in for it. That's like the worst of the Bath and Body Works performances. In my experience, it's like 10 or 20% of the candles on the floor, which is actually pretty decent considering the number of candles that they have and the amount of attention that they can pay. They're not a boutique company, right? I can deal with it. I can deal with it. There are at least 20% of the candles that burn like this. Like a dream. Like no candle company could touch this. High strength and throw, clean burn. I mean, you can't ask for a better performance than this. I don't know of any candle company that performs better than this. Truly, truly. This is in the vanguard. This is like the worst. And then, what does that leave us? 60% of Bath & Body Works candles that are in between. There is a great continuum then from horrible to fantastic and somewhere in between, you know? There you go. Bath & Body Works for today. Mahogany Coconut and Coconut Sandalwood. For my money, I'm going to buy Mahogany Coconut again. I'm just not going to buy Coconut Sandalwood. I'm not. Performance be damned. Like, I want a fragrance that I love, that brings a smile to my face, that makes me want to drink it in. And I just don't think Coconut Sandalwood does that for me. But you let me know what your impression is. Because obviously Coconut Sandalwood has a following. It's a fairly long-standing candle in the collection. And I know there's a lot of people who really like it. So tell me, am I missing something? Okay. It's usually in my wheelhouse. So I'm a little surprised. And I'm also a little surprised to be advocating on behalf of a mahogany candle, if you know what I mean. All right, my friends. More reviews coming. I have one from Voluspa coming up. I am almost through with all of the Yankee candles that I bought in the holiday season. So we're going to have a big video on that. And I did it. I made a Kringle order for those reserve candles that are botanical. Butterfly, green leaf, fern, leafy fern. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, those three come into my door soon, so I will definitely do a video once they come to my door, and we'll smell them and we'll talk about them. Okay? I'll see you guys in the next one.